Welcome to the podcast that broadcasts from Revelstoke, BC.
We're bringing you stories from the back eddies and undercurrents of a mountain town.
I'm Jill McDonald.
And I'm Nora Hughes.
This is Mountain Underground.
Hi, Jill.
Hey, Nora.
How you doing today?
I'm good, actually.
Good.
How about you?
Great.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. I mean, not that these people would know it, but for us it's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah.
Yeah, I actually just got back from Japan.
How opportune.
Yeah.
Because our episode today is about Japanese culture in Revelstoke.
Yeah, which is coincidental, maybe, but yeah, or
Symbiotic. Yeah. Yeah, great.
a happy accident.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Because our guest today is from Japan, right?
Yes, he is. Originally from Japan. Mm-hmm. Tomoaki Fujimara.
Nice.
Originally from Japan. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a really good conversation with him, which
Yes,
we
we
filmed a little
did.
while ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I found it really interesting to encounter someone who's gone full circle. You know, we've talked about trying to find our way here and coming in. Well, we came in with a certain set of expectations, which I don't think Tomo did, but he came as a really young person, leaving a culture entirely behind, only to find himself here,
Yeah.
sort of championing that culture.
Yeah. And I think something that really stood out from his conversation for me was, you know, he came to Canada. He ended up in Cranbrook originally, as he tells us, but he came to Canada to kind of pursue something totally different, like adventure. And I related to that a little bit. I came to Revelstoke to pursue adventure and like kind of stumbled on something unexpected. So that resonated for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you start poking around in the community, who you find and the stories you come up with and what it brings out from, you know, within us. And finding your way into a community is very much about putting yourself out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is, you know, counter to how I like to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, I guess the other thing along the similar vein to that is like when you poke around in our community, you often encounter a lot of history that you wouldn't know is there. Our town is really surprising historically. Mm-hmm. I don't know if surprising is the right word, but it surprises me how much history there is to this place, because when I think of Revelstoke, I don't often think about history. I feel pretty self-involved when I think of Revelstoke and my journey here, but
That's fair. I mean, that's fair. That's fair. That's why a lot of people come to any place is for their own purposes. And honestly, you know, I never used to pay much attention to history either. I was really just concerned about, like you said, finding my way.
yeah.
And yet history has a presence and I don't think we can avoid it.
Yeah, it's true. And we talk a lot about that today in our episode, which is kind of the conjunction of culture and this place, Revelstoke.
And how that's changing. If we're going to talk about history in this place and the surprising things in it, then I think we also need to talk about culture. And with our cricket players, we've noticed that there's definitely a shift in the culture. And I notice it when I go to the grocery store,
Yeah.
because I see all kinds of new products showing up that weren't there before. And that reminds me of a more urban setting. And I find it quite exciting, you know, and refreshing.
Who would have thought shopping in Revelstoke would bring up those thoughts?
I know. Yeah, it's not like we have a lot of shopping.
Yeah.
But we do have an independent grocery store. God bless them.
They have the best stuff.
Yeah, they do. And they seem to be quite responsive to their customers. So what is the demand?
Yeah.
And
We've got a pretty great international food aisle now.
so when people do come to our town, you know, do they notice the history? And I wonder, is the history even visible? Are people noticing it, or are they kind of just skimming over it? And are we losing those connections to our past history?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I don't know if I know how to answer it from everybody who I know here, but I kind of want to go around and like do a poll. Like, do you know about this fact of Revelstoke or this fact, but I do think that there's probably a pretty big disconnect between the big events that have happened in Revelstoke's past and how they've shaped this place.
Yeah, I think there is too. And in our conversation with Tomo, I certainly learned things that I didn't know.
Yeah, me too. Well, should we dive into that?
Let's dive in.
I did not know much of the internment road camps between Sickness and Revelstoke. First, I moved to Revelstoke. There was no information in my files whatsoever. I knew, whenever we talk about internment camp, it's like New Denver, Slocan cities, and Castle. That's the main core of internment camp. And, just my first Canadian friend was the Japanese Canadian from Cranbrook who was interned in Sandon and passed away during COVID time. And those are kind of connections that I had early stage in my life. But when I first moved here, before the internment camp, the railway brought so many Japanese here. We had quite a few depth to the Japanese history here. And just a journey of I learned about the avalanche side. And there are more to go. And then, in order to understand the history and connections to why Japanese were here, and, obviously the Chinese were involved more to it, but why Japanese got involved more in the avalanche world, to the road camp world, and many things. So just journey became to my kind of notes that, I better find it out, who they are. And especially they're the Canadian-born, Japanese Canadian.
They were Canadian-born.
Born Japanese Canadian. So we call Nisei, second generation. It's like my son. So the parents are Japanese most of the time that time, and born here. So a younger one. But that was my belief. When more and more I research, actually there were a few first immigrants or working like elder people working in these camps as well. So, the more I study about those 6 camps between Sycamus and Revelstoke, more aware and then curious how they settled and how they felt.
What did you find out?
The list of the Japanese Canadian road camp list, nothing there much. So I have to dig in more and more. And fascinating of the connections between 1910 Rogers Pass Avalanche Railway involvement to, they were interned later on here. A few of them that
Same people.
Yeah, same people. And then a few people interned Jasper National Park side. A few people shipped to the POW in Ontario as well, who worked the railway of the 1910. So I'm trying to connect those ones. That's my journey, and make sure that connections and awareness is there.
So tell us, sorry, I should have got you to introduce yourself first.
That's okay.
Say who you are and where we are.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so my name is Tomo. That's a short name of the Japanese names Tomoaki Fujimara. Yeah, and then I'm originally from Osaka, Japan. That's where I grew up. Original birthplace is the South Island called Saga Prefecture. So no snow whatsoever. I grew up in a city.
In a city?
Yeah, in the big city. Yeah, 2.8 million people.
Holy smokes.
Yes.
That's a big city.
Yeah, but when I became 18 through the last year of high school, I struggled quite a bit of the entrance exam for universities. And I tried and I failed most of it. And then fail in the Japanese world is not acceptable. Right. So it was a very difficult journey. Expectation was high on me, both family side as well as the society side. And I'm the youngest one. Therefore, my family could not afford private universities. I have to go public side of it. And that journey took me to the next level as well. My poor subject, the English, I have to learn. And then that's the reason I could not success in Japan, was failing all the language skill sets of Japanese or English, that I wasn't happy with it. So,
and then you end up in Canada.
Yeah, I end up in Canada, the place that I did not know where I was heading to.
Working and living in English.
Yeah, I'm basically working hard to learn the spoken English and understand and then build up the communication. So I moved to Cranbrook, BC, and where I was not sure where I was landing. Yeah, there
And
was
you picked that just randomly?
there was agent, the travel agents or the study abroad agent that I picked the brochures either East Kootenay Community College or Selkirk College. So I took the minor side of it that Japanese won't go. The name is too long. East Kootenay Community College, now College of Rockies. Two, and there was, Cranbrook wasn't a name on the North American map when I purchased in Japan. So I did not know where I was landing even after the arrival of Vancouver.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I took the kind of bet myself.
You took a big gamble.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is a huge gamble for sure.
gamble.
And even arrival Vancouver, there were 3 flights, domestic flights were canceled, and I wasn't sure what is this country is about. No idea. And it definitely changed my perspective and changed my, how do I say, approach to the people as well. I'm more naive, not outspoken person. I was more quiet
Before. When you first arrived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to change that to ask people with my broken English.
Right.
Yeah, I could not be shy anymore. I have to keep pushing myself to find the people.
So you leave Japan largely because of Japanese culture, and you end up here exploring.
Yeah, both the Japanese culture or language, basically, it is just poor language, skill that I had, and I need to break that through. And if I wanted to, spend money and time to learn, might as well obtain it rather than just study back in Japan. So that's the first one, and 2 is basically a simple life I wanted to find. After the Kobe earthquake, that triggered my brain that I wouldn't be able to survive with the Japanese education. So 2 main reasons there. Therefore, it's still stuck in my brain that I'm trying to, explore that I wouldn't do back in Japan. That's my priority always. Something that I would not do that back in Japan. That became my kind of job.
Right. I wanted to get back to the internment camps. You said some really interesting things that some of those people who worked here and helped develop this place ended up interned in these locations. And I wasn't aware of these locations either. And I've lived here my whole life. Lived in Kamloops, lived in Kaslo, where it's well known that there's a well-known internment camp in Kaslo as well. So I was really quite shocked that that this information wasn't available to me or known to me. How did it come up?
Well, in 2017 or so, there was the committees in Vancouver, Lower Mainland, that they were trying to work with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructures to bring up the sign project. So along the highways, along the internment camps, they wanted to lift up the stories of each internment camp sites. And they just, hey, Tomo, you live in Revelstoke. Here you are. Here's a homework for you. You gotta look into those. And so, wow. Okay, I'll look into it, and not many literatures whatsoever. Only one book saying around 500 to 600 people are interned here. And wow, that's a very little information to start with. So, my past experience of how to investigate the history of the avalanche world to try to promote the community to Japan, I go look at it, library or microfiche to look at it, the newspapers and whatnot. So I had a kind of skill sets or the journey of how to investigate. I didn't go to school for that, but I kind of connected to the people, social media, and in contact with people in Ontario. Since I learned that most of internees went to most east rather than west back to Vancouver. So there are a few people who interned here still live 95 years to 100 years old, still live in Ontario, and they have more pictures than we expected. And that journey opened up eyes, and they had names, they enjoyed hockey, they enjoyed baseball. And internment camp, yes, very negative, but I think those folks, we have the word of shogunai, which is we cannot do anything about this. It happened to us, but how can we make it the most of it? So they made it turn to the enjoyment, especially those young folks. Just sad that they are interned and separated from family. They worked very harsh environment to expand the highway, and then you can see a couple work even that Taft area. You can see the bank of the highway has a rock stuck to it. Those are Japanese, I believe, that left it behind.
Wow.
Yeah. So just more and more is fascinating, and I think zillions that Japanese mindset happen. Yeah, well, we try our best, but could not make it happen. How can we make it happen with what we have? And then that's the zillions, and I always reflect myself. Even this house, when I bought, wasn't great, but I have roof, I have wall. It's better than internment camp. I can work at it.
Do many people know this history? Did you find that, in general, people in Revelstoke understand?
Well, Revelstoke itself have still quite a bit journey to go, I believe, or I feel to it. I think, it is, once again, the town and museums, people need to sit together and learn about it. And then the teachers are aware because I communicate with them. So I do the Pro D Day for them. So I did a presentation for them, which is great. And but the general public in Revelstoke, they know very little of it probably, because we have difficult history that we pushed the Japanese away from the city limit during World War II. So with that kind of action that we took in Revelstoke, do we really want to bring back that what we treated other people? So there was a little bit, ways of acceptance that we did it, or we just want to hash it and don't want to talk about it. There are quite a few different groups set up, and obviously World War II, the Japanese did such a horrific events in the Pacific side of it, and then some of the Commonwealth or so had a difficult time to understand this. And there was an excuse too, probably when they are in turn, their business and the groups in Japan became so strong. That's one of the reasons I understand that the government decided to step into took their positions, or they confiscate their properties and put it to the work. But war itself, we're humanities, we do something, it's outrage of it, and then hateism, and then griefs comes out. And then, lucky enough, I think the Japanese slowly we learn about it, and then to gain the trust in the world, we cannot do it the same way. We have to understand this and then try to integrate it. How can we contribute? And because it's easy for us to be pointed with different skin colors and our nationality. So all the world we think, we got to be careful. But in the community here, once again, how can we integrate it? It's a very difficult topic. And I hope one day that, we have great, ways to sit down and communicate or make it positive outcome.
Well, I would expect that the children have no problem with history, do they?
It's hard because once again, children accept the history or it's old stuff. Everyone has different perspective to the history. It's happened. Why we care? Some people that perspective, yes, some other perspectives, a history that we don't want to repeat. Let's study about it. And lucky enough from where I came from, once again, in the hierarchy in history is so deep in our culture. So to me, it's even, looking from different perspective, history is so important, not one way. And then from my side is Japanese, so I study from Japanese perspective toward the internment camp. But I have heard from, a different perspective towards Japanese for, China, Manchurians and Koreans, what we have done it. In the Philippines for POWs to hold, Canadians and Americans in English for a long time, and we killed those folks. So I think that learning again the language helped me open wise to different perspective. And bottom end is we really need to communicate and put it on tables and then come up with a good discussion, constructive discussions, rather than hiding everything or suppressing. And that, we just need to be respectful to listen to each other, and then what's the why this action's being taken, why Japanese took that even World War II. And then more and more I learned, I said, okay, and it's great to know. And history is still repeating in a way. But in order to understand color of Revelstoke, as the foreigners, immigrant, I wanted to learn the color of this town. Otherwise, I'm not respecting. So how do I do is involved with piece of puzzle. And then that's my contribution to that. Hopefully I can learn the Ukrainians history, Italians history, Sikh history, and then hopefully those background, knowledge or interest come to the front. And we have great discussion that goes to the multicultural. Then we can welcome more to those outside or new people, and we need to connect those one. We are detached, of the history, the museum, and the newbies, new people coming over. And even whoever lived here, I don't think we explore enough of it, of this town. We're comfortable, and that's us human beings. Once we are comfortable, established, it's hard to explore, and it's easy for us to avoid, right? But for us, it's just chip away. How can we do it? And then once again, the language barriers always occurs, and therefore reading Japanese to bring it up front is the key.
Do you find Revelstoke welcoming to new cultures, or are we kind of standoffish?
It has a wave to it, and some sections are welcome, some sections, and until we work hard, both sides of it, okay, we get it. It's a small town. In order to do it, once again, I believe I have done it, quite a contribution to the museum to it, and museum support me as well. But it's all volunteer based. That I don't get paid or anything. But the volunteer journey is now get delighted right now. I'm hired now, the project manager from Vancouver Mountain View Cemetery. So they hired me as last week. They called me. Here you are. We'll hire you to investigate over 2,000 Japanese burial.
Oh wow!
In Mountain View Cemetery in Vancouver.
In Vancouver.
Yeah, which comes from Japanese Canadian Legacy Project, and then Revelstoke was nominated, and hopefully Revelstoke go forward so they can get the grant to uplift of the Japanese Canadian history, pre-war, during war, after war. Then we can have a little bit of discussions, or open the doors.
Yeah. I'm gonna move away from that for now and just ask you, what's your favorite place in Revelstoke? Your favorite spot?
Favorite spots in Revelstoke, surrounding or just town? Just I have to clear.
I think both, either or both.
I think whenever I go to foragings or walking in the old growth forest, and that's how I feel favorite side of it. Is they take my energy out, and so it's basically refresh, come back, and I can sleep better. And a lot of noise surrounding me for myself, and town is great, but I prefer to be in nature to it, and yeah, it's good to see the friends and families and then walking through the town too. But whenever I go by myself in the woods, that's my favorite moment.
Yeah.
Yes, and
Well, and it's a unique feature we have.
yeah, unique.
Around here. It's
Yes.
not the same as a coastal forest.
No.
It's a different kind of forest.
Yes, but definitely during COVID to post-COVID, lots of forests being cut, and that's my sadness behind the scene. And yeah, it is a journey again. How can I help to, protect it if possible? Yet, the economical perspective, I understand I use lots of woods.
Yeah. We
So,
all do. Yeah.
and so that's part of our problem. But I do try to recycle as much as I can. That's my bottom end.
So
I just-
you live here with your son?
yes.
Yeah. So do you have a vision of your future here or his future here?
My visions here in town.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, after my ski guide certificate of the Association of Canadian Mountain Guide, opened up the world, and I'm hoping to seek the world. And I'll come back. I'm lucky enough I have land and properties to, relax and enjoy about. Yet, world is calling me. They need me. And I'm lucky enough that 2 languages opened up to be in Europe, to be in South America in the future. Maybe next year is the Australia and New Zealand. My skill sets are recognized. So I hope that, here in Canada as well, if they think that's value, I'll stay. But, if the world is calling me, I'll seek for it.
Do you need a timeout from here?
From Revelstoke?
Yeah.
I will see how,
I mean, I feel
my
that way sometimes. Like, I need to get out of here.
lucky enough, not avoid, but I have job to be in Japan, right? Once or twice, I get paid to go to Japan. Well, I create myself to,
You make that
opportunity, right? So I don't feel, I have to get out. More to, it took me 10 years to do renovation this far, and a few more years to finish. And once that is, feel good enough, I think time comes for me to explore.
Have you been to Japan, Taiki?
Oh, yeah, many times.
Oh, many times. Oh,
Yeah, so,
What would
yeah.
you say is similar between here and there?
not much.
Not much.
No, like, it's fairly different. Bigger cities, right? Like, here, yeah, there's big cities, but there's nothing close together. There's definitely more people in the cities, right? So it's a lot more busier.
Right.
And it's actually a lot harder to see crime, in a way.
In the city?
Yeah, I mean anywhere in Japan, because it's it's not easy to see crime, right? You don't see much homeless people activity. It's just all people who have actual jobs, So
So you think you see that here?
a bit, right? Just a little bit. Because Japan hides it most of the time from the cities, so
Right.
yeah, you don't
It's
see it.
interesting you see that though. I'm intrigued that you see that because I would say Revelstoke has like not a very visible homeless culture.
Yeah, because there's only the known amount is like 3 or 4, maybe 5, not even 10. So, although it's really expensive.
Yeah. Because it's really expensive, you think?
Well, no, it's so expensive here that I'm shocked that there's no homeless people.
Right.
But I guess it's harder to get any, like, you know, addictive stuff besides smokes anyway. So, here in Revelstoke.
I know what you mean though. I grew up in the States, and it's easier.
Yeah.
It's harder to pick that stuff out when you expect it, but then in a small town where you don't necessarily expect it, you see it more. It sticks out more.
Yeah, there's lots of YouTubers just talking about it right now.
Yeah.
Just saying how bad America is right now. So,
Did you feel like you're a Canadian guy when you're here and a Japanese guy when you're
well, I mostly think I'm Canadian. Not really Japanese as much. Although, yes, my parents are both from Japan, so I have Japanese blood, yes, but my perspective, Canada's my home instead of Japan is.
Oh, that makes sense. It is your home.
Yeah, but
Yeah. Like, are your friends curious about Japanese culture?
some of my friends has been to Japan actually, so they know there's like it's big. There's lots of festivals and stuff like that. But yeah, most of them are curious about food.
About food.
Yeah, because when I was in elementary, I brought food a lot, like Japanese foods for lunches, and yeah, they are interested in it. So
Well, that's good. Do you like Japanese food when you're in
yes, I do. Like I love it. It's so good. Like it's delicious. Like it's hard to forget what the flavor is though. Yeah. So it sticks in your mouth a long time most of the time. I want to do paleontology or music, either or. I'm kind of stuck in between that right now. So
What kind of music?
I play saxophone.
That's
So-
a really cool instrument.
Yeah, it might be jazz pieces or something like that.
Cool.
And there were a lot of dinosaurs here, I assume.
Alberta, yeah. I've been to Drumheller, up north where there's a dig site there for Drumheller. So, yeah, I've been to those places to, yeah.
Is paleontology is the study of
Bones, mostly.
bones mostly? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not archaeology.
No, no.
You specifically want to find.
Bones and, yeah, and discover how long ago they were there and stuff like that. So, it's also age as well. Like, there's people who do things here for indigenous things, too.
Cool.
Like, how long ago were they here?
That would be paleontology?
No,
No,
that's
that
slightly
would be
different.
archaeology more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're interested in history too, it would seem.
Yes, I've done some PowerPoints for World War II and maybe one. Yeah, one of those two. So, yeah, I've done a lot of that, for sure.
You
So,
actually study Canadian history yet?
we did that in grade 4.
Grade 4.
Not very interesting.
No?
Oh wow.
Why do you say that?
It's just people colonizing Canada from like Europe, so it's not the best, but that's history, I guess, right? So
That's what happened.
yeah.
But you think it was boring or you think it was
Yeah, it's kind of boring in a way. I mean, Japan is longer. Like, as my dad's done history things with, like, Japan, like, learn it. He said it was not fun because it was way too long. But,
So we've only got a couple hundred years.
but I think it's, like, from a Canadian's perspective, that's fun because samurai, horses, fire arrows, stuff like that, you know, like stuff about war instead. So,
You mean Canadian perspective of Japanese history?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Which I think is more interesting. So.
Do you learn a lot about Revelstoke's history in school?
A bit, mostly from my dad, from him talking to like Kathy English and people like that, because I listen in on the conversation most of the time. So yeah.
In 2009, the community wanted to have a commemoration of the 1910 Rogers Pass avalanche incident, 100 years anniversary. So there was a committee and that Railway Museum, local Revelstoke Museum, Parks Canada, Avalanche Canada, Canadian Avalanche Association, as well as that time we had the Friends of Mount Revelstoke and Glacier. So they are sitting around the table, and I got approached by them to look into the Japanese side of it. In order to commemorate, we needed to have names and exact numbers, and curious why Japanese were here, not Chinese. So we all know the railway history goes from Pacific. Chinese were involved more heavily than Japanese. And so, the 58 men were killed and 32 are Japanese. So they asked me to investigate. So 2 years of volunteer work to find out who they are and if we had any relatives, lived in, Japan, and if so, I wanted to make connections for them.
And when they asked you to do that, was that something that you had previously done? Like, had you had a deep involvement in history, or was this kind of a surprise opportunity?
It wasn't surprise to me. It's more to challenge, again, journey that I got assigned for it. And also, I initially felt or instinct was using this helps me to connect or bring Japanese attention to the avalanche world. Culturally, the Japanese like to listen to the indirect conversation, not the direct conversation. And learning or showing to learn about the history is one of the ways to respect the seniorities in society. So this was the opportunity for me to input energy to regain back toward my value as the avalanche technicians and workers. Until 2009, I went back a few times back in Japan, but they basically didn't want to listen to me. In the Japanese proverb, we call the nail is sticking out. Let's push it down, nail it down. So I was one of those nails, which is very odd, or it's not harmonized to the Japanese community. So in order to reconnect to Japan, to Canada, and we need Canadians' avalanche method, education and awareness to Japan. We cannot just send Canadians. We need to have somebody who understands both culture, languages, and contents, why we make decisions, and we do, work on the risk management. In order to do it, this was the first initial journey for me to investigate and do work hard and be diligent, and that bring back to Canadian side. Hey, we need to learn history as well. We are young here for the historical perspective.
So that's why it was important for you to be involved with that.
Yes. And it's still, it is a long journey. Still, I've been working on that investigation.
Did you find out why the Japanese were here?
The reasons the Japanese were here, what I learned from the professors in Kyoto, he was the more to Japanese Canadian historical perspective. And he was saying that after Russian War in 1904, 1905, Japan won against Russia, but the compensation wasn't there. Japan received or gained the land, but the money wasn't. So the tax went up after 1905, and the poverty became bigger and difficult to live. And therefore, 1907 was big Japanese immigrants to Canada and then same as states, the West Coast. But the states decided to not to have Japanese, so they had regulations anti-Asians, and that came to Canada as well. There was riots against the Asians in September 1907. So 1907, we had a big list of the Japanese immigrants, and which I have investigated as well. So I have probably over 9,000 names in my computers, and some of whom worked for railways. And then I have over 22,000 Japanese names based out of the 1929 census the Japanese collected. So I know, or I learned the origin of their village or towns where they came and come to live in Canada.
Wow, that's neat to be able to make that connection. And
yeah, it was very unique, and definitely chill came into, goosebumps came to when I learned grandkids still lived and did not know anything about grandfather who died after Rogers passed. And then that was first time ever they visited during 2010 commemorations, and talking to their grandfather after Rogers passed was moving. But I was translator for their poetries to the letters, so I could not bring the emotions. I have to filter myself to be translator. It was difficult, but definitely quite a bit of power that I received. And I think those 32 Japanese are still pushing me to next journey, to the other journey. And yeah, it's a unique opportunity they have given to me.
So were some of those people just missing? Like you said, they didn't know their grandfather's history. Were they never reported back to Japan?
So Canada is still, compared to the United States, it's minor. Sorry to say, the minor countries from Japanese economical perspective. You don't hear much of news about Canada. You hear a lot about the USA and Europe. So back in time, when you go visit to Japan, basically, hard of Japanese left there to come to Canada, they call American Village, or people went to America, North America. So they did not know much of it, but we do know from the newspaper articles in Japanese that time, and kept in the UBC, described the compensation money went back to Japan. So that's another journey that I investigate the compensation money, how much they are, and then who received recipient of the compensation, which helped me to connect to their own town and look for their siblings or the father or mother side, and found grandkids. Yeah. So.
And the other project that you were part of there with the museum, that was the highway signs.
1910 Rogers Pass, once again, not only 32 Japanese, we knew there were more railway workers. So I dusted off the pay stuff of the 1910. So we have hundreds of Japanese worked over there.
So it's like the tip of the iceberg a bit.
Yes, and then the Japanese newspaper described a few Japanese survived, but the society I said, well, that's newspapers. We don't know whether they survive or not.
Yeah.
So I needed to prove. That was huge motivation. Therefore, when I heard the project of the internment camp sign project, coming from the actually Vancouver mainland Japanese Canadian community, they knew I was individual investigators of this region's interior BC. They approached to me. I'm sorry to say, the Revelstoke Museum didn't want to do anything about it. So I brought a opportunity and asked kindly for support from Revelstoke Museum. Didn't want to proceed. So I went to Sycamoose Museum, and the Sycamoose Museum was welcome. So very unique, interesting how they welcomed. And during World War II internment camp as well, they were more welcome for internees to bring those young fellows to even their house for sauna, to food. The community of Sycamoose were very upset probably that time too, because most of them are the Scandinavians, not the Commonwealth.
Right.
So they felt discrimination already back that time. So they welcome that challenge is, or conflict is opportunity. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm okay to be filmed.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I think that's a good way to. That's most of my questions there. That's a good way to sum it up. I've noticed a lot of themes throughout this interview with you, and like communication, and the challenges that you accept, but also the parallels between your life in the snow, and your life in investigating, and your relationship with your history and your culture. There's a lot of parallels there, and it's very cool to see how they all merge, and that is you as a person. It's very cool to talk to you. So
yes,
thank you so much.
Thank you very much too. Yeah, it's a unique that at one point that I go so far away from the avalanche. Well, what are we doing here? But it comes to actually the practice of the Japanese chess to it. My son is practicing too, but it's not English chess. It's complicated. You have lots of thoughts to it to see bigger pictures, which chess you're moving, and then chess you're obtaining from opponent, use how to use it, and how can you sacrifice to take that risk.
Yeah.
And it's just all those are everything's interconnected.
There's something you said over the phone after, I forget, I was driving somewhere and I was like, we should write down how we feel about it. And you said, you connected Tomo's episode to the Cricket Club, and you were like, I don't know if are we as a community ready to talk about these things, I don't know that we are. And you kind of you posed that question out there. I thought that was a good thought.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if that still resonates with you after having sat with it for a while or not, but
yeah, I'm not sure that we are ready to talk about it yet. I still think there's tender points, and I don't know if it's because we don't have the information or if because we're still, I think we resist being shown the bad sides of our history, and some people get defensive about it and say, well, there were bad things done too in the wars, and anyways, everybody's culpable. So
yeah.
I think we don't want to dwell on the past, but I think ignoring the past or trying to change it worse is far worse.
Yeah.
Like, let's acknowledge that there were terrible things that happened, and let's talk about them, and it won't be comfortable. And I think that's the only way to move forward, though.
Yeah. And I mean, what I was going to say from that is, do you think that reaction or that resistance is a resistance to change? I kind of wonder.
It's certainly a resistance to change in perception.
Yeah.
That's one thing for sure. So when I went to the internment camp site, where not far from here. And it's all overgrown. It's a campground now. But I was just imagining people living in the trees there in tents and putting in the highway. And I mean,
Not being able to come into town.
having to walk into town as being a long way, knowing that when you get to town, if you're not welcome,
Yeah.
it's pretty brutal. And also when Tomo talks about some of the internees being people who helped put Rogers Pass through in like 1910. So they helped forge the union of our country. And then 30 or 40 years later, we say, oh, well, you're the enemy.
Yeah. That's really challenging.
I mean, human nature is just brutal. We're brutal.
Yeah, we are.
So that part's not going to change. But we're certainly, cultures are merging like they never did in those days before.
Yeah.
Everyone's moving around all over. But I think to believe that we don't have biases or prejudices is completely wrong. Because all you have to do is be the only person who looks like you in a situation, and you come face to face with your prejudices, biases, and how it feels to be the only person.
Right. And we have no idea.
We have no
what
idea.
that feels like.
No, we have no idea.
Yeah. What about Tomo's journey as a whole throughout our entire conversation? I think we learned a lot about him as well as our history here in Revelstoke. How did you feel about learning so much about Tomo? Maybe not how did you feel, but
Yeah. Well, he's very outspoken about the challenges he's had and the things that he's overcome and still trying to overcome.
Yeah, I really like how he said that everything in his life, he had expectations and he was met with different things, and a big theme I felt like just from hearing this short segment of his life is all these challenges, and he's come face to face with them, and he hasn't always expected them, but he's worked on them and he's overcome things in, I think, a way that probably he hadn't even expected, and that he views everything as kind of like, all right, this is the next challenge. And I think that that's a positive way to view things for the work that he's taking on and the work that he's doing in our community. Like, okay, this is the next challenge. Like, how are we going to integrate this and make this better?
Yeah, well, a common theme amongst a lot of our guests is that community involvement and doing things for the community. And, in our journey of finding our way in here, I think we're along the same journey. And that's interesting. I also found that he had to overcome his shyness in order to get by in a place where you don't speak the language and you just don't know what's going on. And there's another common theme that I find coming up that resonates with me amongst a lot of people, is that they like to have their space and their solitude, and that this is a welcoming, friendly place, but it's also very aloof. It's like, okay, yeah, we're not opposing you or anything, but we are not just rolling out the red carpet and inviting you in. We have this distance, and a lot of people have mentioned it.
Yeah. I feel very similar. Yeah. Yeah, hard to integrate yourself into groups and all kinds of things.
It takes time. It probably takes involvement, and you kind of got to put yourself out there, which I guess is what we're doing.
That's our next challenge. That's what we're doing here.
Yeah. I have to thank Tomo for being so forthright and honest about his feelings. Maybe not so much his feelings, I think that's a bit overstating it, but his experiences, his encounters, and his determination to keep moving forward and bringing forward that history, of his culture, or its culture of origin, and also a culture that has been quite harsh to him. Like Japanese culture hasn't been that kind to him either.
Yeah. I think it's fantastic that he's having these conversations in our community, and
I personally would love to see more information about the Japanese people, about every people that have been here and helped us get to where we are now. We owe them.
Revelstoke is home to the Sinaiaks, Secwepemc, Ktunaxa, and Syilx people.
Come visit us. spend some time and learn more about life along the Columbia River.